Stay tuned for another Newscenter88 presentation on WMUL FM Huntington. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap, covering the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap team.
Welcome to this edition of Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Julie McAndrews. Coming up on this edition of Weekend Recap, Emma Johnson will be in with this week's weather forecast.
Now, on to our top story.
اللي هو طبعا طخ الجنود والدبابات ناس قدامي بقت تصاوب وناس ورايا بقت تنطخ ناس ببوسها وناس بايديها وناس برجليها سيبنا الكراتين سيبنا الاكل سيبنا المساعدات كل يوم منطخ منا بيجي مليون واحد صرنا صار الدم مقابل الاكل.
The head of a Gaza hospital where some of the wounded from bloodshed surrounding an aid convoy were taken says more than 80% had been struck by gunfire, suggesting heavy shooting by Israeli troops. At least 112 Palestinians were killed and more than 750 others were injured Thursday when witnesses said troops opened fire as crowds raced to pull goods off an aid convoy. Israel said many of the dead were trampled in a stampede and that its troops fired at some in the crowd who they believe threatened them. Dr. Mohammed Saleh of Al-Adha Hospital said 176 wounded were brought to the facility, of whom 142 had suffered gunshot wounds and 34 showed injuries from a stampede.
President Joe Biden says he hopes a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas would pause hostilities and allow for remaining hostages to be released, can take effect by early next week.
Do you think that ceasefire will start, sir?
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet.
When asked when he hoped such a deal could be finalized, Biden said that he hoped it could happen by next Monday. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch says Israel has failed to comply with an order by the United Nations top court to provide urgently needed aid to desperate people in the Gaza Strip.
Kyiv officials say Russian forces are pushing hard against more Ukrainian towns and villages in eastern and southeastern Ukraine as Moscow tries to press its current advantage in weapons and troops. Ukraine said Thursday it has shot down 13 Russian warplanes this month, despite Russia's apparent offensive momentum on the ground. Russian forces have been bludgeoning some Ukrainian defensive positions by deploying overwhelming amounts of artillery and troop numbers in an effort to punch through defensive lines at targeted points. Russia's gains have been small, slow, and costly, but Ukraine doesn't have enough reservists and has a severe shortage of artillery shells as the supply of military aid from Western partners has waned.
Coming up next, West Virginia bill banning non-binary gender designations on birth certificates heads to Governor Jim Justice. Stay with us for a recap of news across the tri-state when Weekend Recap returns right after this.
Welcome to Marshall University. We hope you enjoy your stay. But we know sometimes college students can get a little down. Introducing the cutting edge of all ailments, WMUL. Feeling homesick? No problem. WMUL will keep you company all day long, from our 6 a.m. morning shows until late night alternative. Tired of pinching pennies? Then WMUL is perfect for you. Marshall's very own radio station is 100% commercial free. We hope you enjoy our presentation, and don't forget to listen to 88.1 WMUL.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Julie McAndrews. A loaded schedule can lead to stress and burnout, especially during midterms. As John Bogus reports, students have found intramural basketball to be a great way to take a break and have fun with friends.
The Marshall Rec Center recently held its Spring 2024 Basketball Intramural Championships. 3 different games were played at the Cam Henderson Center to showcase the teamwork several groups of students had put together. Fourth-year students Jeremy Eccles and Tristan Burgess were a part of the Open Comp Championship team and said their major is what brought the team together.
Med students out here. Then we brought in my nephew after the first semester. Got the camaraderie. We always hoop in the rec center, so it worked out. The nerd connection that we have. We get together at least once a week.
A student's schedule is often very busy, making it hard to find time to socialize. Sophomore pharmacy student Justin Ritchie, who played on the Rec Comp Championship team, said that playing intramural basketball is a great time to catch up with good friends.
It's low stakes. It's just something to do as a group. I'm in pharmacy school. I'm busy all the time. This is the only time I get to hang out with these guys.
Classes at Marshall have officially passed the midterm point. Eccles, Burgess, and Ritchie all agreed that basketball was a great way to de-stress from the upcoming exams.
Yeah, well, it's always good to get in the gym. Fourth year is tough, and it's definitely good to come out here, especially with some of these guys. Great relationship.
Whenever I'm playing sports, it's just it's not midterm week whenever you're on the court.
Basketball is just one of many intramural sports that students can participate in to relieve stress throughout the semester. For Newscenter88, I'm John Bogus.
Thanks, John. 7v7 flag football, dodgeball, and 6v6 volleyball are the next set of intramural sports the Marshall Rec Center will offer.
A West Virginia bill that would outlaw the gender designation of non-binary on birth certificates is headed to Governor Jim Justice's desk. The Republican governor hasn't spoken publicly about the bill. Justice previously signed laws restricting gender-affirming care for minors and transgender children's participation in sports. West Virginia doesn't currently allow non-binary gender markers on birth certificates, and Republican delegate Chris Pritt says he wanted to pass a law banning it to ensure the state doesn't start offering it. Non-binary people identify themselves as not strictly male or female. At least 16 other states offer some form of third gender identification on birth certificates.
Coming up next, wildfire grows into one of the largest in Texas history as flames menace multiple small towns. Stay with us for a recap of news around the nation when Weekend Recap returns right after this.
Are you tired of spinning that dial and hearing the same old top 40 stuff being overplayed? Do you go to bed at night dreaming of a station that will play music you want to hear all the time? Whether you're driving in your car or chilling on the porch, leave your dial here at 88.1 WMUL, progressive music, and other stuff that you want to hear.
Having a good time. Watching the sunrise shine.
This is your Weedmeister 2000 string trimmer, cranking up to chow down on the crabgrass growing out of your driveway. This is the little chunks of rock and dirt flying everywhere like shrapnel, hitting your ankles, and sooner or later, hitting your eye. This is you calling yourself every name in the book for not wearing eye protection when working with a lawn tool. Any lawn tool.
And this is a message about safety from the American Optometric Association.
Welcome back to the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Julie McAndrews. Hunter Biden has appeared on Capitol Hill for a defiant closed-door deposition with lawmakers. He blasted the Republican impeachment inquiry into his father and the family's business affairs as, quote, a house of cards, unquote, built on lies as he faced a battery of probing questions. The deposition of the president's son Wednesday marks a decisive point for the 14-month Republican investigation into the Biden family. The probe has centered on Hunter Biden and his overseas work for clients in Ukraine, China, Romania, and other countries. Republicans have long questioned whether these business dealings involved corruption and influence peddling by President Joe Biden, particularly when he was vice president. But they have yet to produce direct evidence of the misconduct by the president.
Mitch McConnell says he'll step down as Senate Republican leader in November. The 82-year-old Kentucky lawmaker is the longest-serving Senate leader in history. He's maintained his power in the face of dramatic changes in the Republican Party. He made the announcement Wednesday on the Senate floor. He says,
one of life's most underappreciated talents is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter.
McConnell also says he plans to serve out his Senate term, which ends in January of 2027.
And when we came out, the sky just turned black. I mean, the smoke was so thick. And luckily we made it out and into the migrant caravan. It was absolutely unreal in that the wind, I'm guessing they said 70 miles an hour. It seemed to remove the ash from the fire as it went. And we went through, I bet, 30 miles of what I can only describe as a lunar landscape, just absolute barren death.
A cluster of wildfires is scorching the Texas Panhandle. One of the blazes has grown into one of the largest in state history. An 83-year-old grandmother from the tiny town of Stintet was the lone confirmed fatality on Wednesday. Flames have blackened the landscape across a vast stretch of small towns and cattle ranches. Authorities warn that damage to the communities on the high plains could be extensive. The largest fire has expanded to nearly 1,300 square miles. It has jumped into parts of neighboring Oklahoma. Texas A&M Forest Services say the flames are only about 3% contained.
Coming up, Emma Johnson will be in with this week's weather forecast, and FM88 Sports' Jonathan Edwards will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics. Stay with us.
My brothers, we gather here today for one true and all-holy purpose, the summoning of the great being. Give away your essence freely, brothers. Now, arise, arise. Yes, it's WMUL 88.1 FM, the greatest source of music, news, and sports the world has ever known. We are in debt to you.
Marshall baseball is right in the middle of a series against the Manhattan Jaspers for its inaugural season at Jack Cook Field. The field is the first official baseball field in Huntington in decades. The team usually plays in Charleston at the Gomart Ballpark or at the YMCA Kennedy Center. Head coach Greg Beals says the experience was worth the wait after the team's 3-0 victory over Manhattan in its opening game.
Man, a lot of work has gone into getting to March 1 and having this ballpark ready for the opener. Coach all along was worried about making sure the ball club was ready, and our guys certainly responded today. We pitched the ball and played great defense, and we got some big hits. Obviously, the leadoff home run set the tempo for the ball club, and certainly this crowd was already ready to go, and that lit this crowd up pretty good.
Coach Greg Beals was happy with the team's performance with a perfect start in the new home of Marshall baseball.
You know, we talk about the new era of Marshall baseball and what this facility is going to mean to our program moving forward. But these young men that are in here right now, they're in the moment, and they took advantage of the moment tonight. It was really fun to watch.
On Saturday, Marshall baseball faced off against Manhattan for Game 2 of the series and lost 5-4. The Jaspers had 5 runs in the second inning, and Marshall attempted a comeback in the 7th with 4 consecutive runs. On Sunday, Marshall will take on Manhattan one last time at 1 p.m. Pre-game coverage starts at 12:45 p.m. right here on the Cutting Edge Sports Radio Network, where FM88 Sports' Ray Ryan and John Bogus will be on the call. Marshall women's basketball got its 23rd win over Georgia Southern on Friday. The final score of 90-43 tied Marshall with the 1986-87 team for the most regular season wins in team history. Marshall is the number 1 seed going into next week's Sun Belt Conference tournament in Pensacola, Florida. The Herd received a double bye and will meet the winner of the Wednesday's matchup between Georgia State and App State at 12:30 p.m. on Friday at the Pensacola Bay Center. Marshall softball is serving as host for the Thundering Herd Invitational at Dot Hicks Field. Marshall bested Purdue in its first game 7-4 before losing 2-3 to the Butler Bulldogs on Friday. Marshall played Butler at 4 p.m. on Saturday and got the best of the Bulldogs in that one, winning 11-3. FM88 Sports' Sean Kelly will be on the call for tomorrow's matchup between the Thundering Herd and the Purdue Boilermakers. Pre-game starts at 1:15 p.m. and game coverage begins at 1:30 right here on 88.1 FM. That concludes the FM88 Sports Report. For FM88 Sports, I'm Luke Hamilton.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson, and now it is time for this week's weather forecast. After a week full of sun, rain, and cold temperatures, it looks like we will start to see some consistency in the weather. Throughout this Saturday, we will possibly see some rain during the day, and we will also see a high of around 60 degrees and a low of around 40 degrees, keeping with the cool temperatures before the summer-like weather rolls in. As Sunday approaches, the temperature will rise into the mid to low 70s and will bring clear skies our way. We will also see lows in the 50s, kickstarting a warm streak that will continue throughout the week. As we look into the upcoming week, rain is still a possibility, and on Monday, we will see highs around 75 degrees and lows around 50 degrees. Throughout the rest of the week, we will see highs in the 60s and 70s and lows in the 40s and 50s. Despite the small possibilities of rain, temperatures continue to climb throughout the week, making it significantly warmer than it was last week. The weather word of the weekend is hurricane. A hurricane is a tropical cyclone with sustained winds of at least 74 miles per hour. Hurricanes form in the Atlantic Basin, Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico, and the eastern North Pacific Ocean. Tropical cyclones of similar intensity are referred to as typhoons in the western Pacific and cyclones in most of the southern hemisphere. Thank you to weatherology.com for that information. And that concludes this week's weather forecast. For News Center 88, I'm Emma Johnson.
That concludes this edition of the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. Tune in next week for our weekly recap of the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University.
You can always watch this newscast on JMC TV or WMUL Radio's YouTube channels.
I'm Julie McAndrews.
And I'm Luke Hamilton. Have a great week.